In the last session this morning, before we break for lunch, we will discuss India's soft power. This year, PLF has an exclusive bookstall at the venue featuring several titles by various publishers. Titles by Blue One Ink, Subbu Publications, Sri Aurobindo Ashram, and Indica Books are specially featured. We also have independent stalls by Garuda Prakashan, Vitasta Publishing, Anadi Foundation, Kulcha Designs, and Story Mirror Infotech. Other than the wide array of books available, these stalls feature titles by all the authors speaking at PLF 2023, so don't miss the chance to get your copies. Kindly be seated for the next session. Lunch is in an hour. We now invite on stage Lalitha Kumaramangalam, former chairperson, National Commission for Women, and Dr. Swapan Dasgupta, former member of parliament and author, and contributing moderator Abhijit Iyer Mitra, senior fellow, Institute of Peace and Conflict Studies, to discuss India's soft power.
Good afternoon, everyone. So, exciting session now on India's soft power. How many of you are all excited? Put your hands up. Yay, good. So normally people don't take soft power very seriously. I do. For a great set of reasons, because, soft power involves so many things. Your art, your culture, your food, your cuisine, lots of things we don't take very seriously around here. So during the G20, for example, this time round, we saw a very significant projection of Indian soft power through G20. Of course, there was all the hard and tangible stuff as well, but there was also a significant soft power projection. So, Lalitha ji, I'll start with you. What do you think are, say, 2, 3, as many as you like, of the most visible elements of India's soft power right now, and where are we pulling our punches and not projecting enough?
I'm not going to talk about the traditional soft power that everybody seems to think of, which is yoga and food and culture, etc. Culture, yes, because it covers a lot more than just food. I would say that a lot of our soft power comes from our capacity to absorb and tolerate. Whether you call it Sanatana Dharma, whether you call it Hinduism, there are many names that may be given to it. But the Indian capacity to take a lot of crap, I'm sorry for the language, is an exemplary example of soft power. If you even look at Prime Minister Modi, how the man manages to keep quiet when things are being thrown at him the way they are, is a remarkable example of resilience. India is an extraordinarily resilient country, despite all the problems we have with each other. Godi media versus some other media, left versus right, etc., etc. We still remain as a country, after nearly 1,000 years of being, whacked into submission, as I like to put it. We have still now come out of that in less than a century, well less than a century. And today we are easily the economy that's the fastest growing, 7.6%, I think the last data shows. Also putting up an extraordinarily good fight against somebody or country, China, whom nobody expected would ever be threatened, right? And soft power is supposed to be about diplomacy. Indian diplomacy is famous. You just said G20. What was it? The fact that we are able to absorb shocks in whatever way they may come at us, singly, together, etc. The fact that we have survived, as I said, nearly 1,000 years of being battened down by whoever didn't like us. The fact that we are now an extremely resurgent economy and people. All of this is one of the most important. Part of this is also that we have recovered our self-confidence and our belief in ourselves, especially the younger generation. They were talking about podcasts. These podcasts are mostly done by what I would call the younger generation. And they don't give sorry, I think I'm going to use too many bad words. Sorry. They don't really care what other people think of them. They say what they want. There's no political correctness or incorrectness there. And they're extremely popular. People want to hear what is being told or broadcast by the podcast, whether we like it or not. That confidence that has come back into India and Indians, I think is an enormously big soft power. I mean, I really don't know what this term soft power means. Soft power is basically you're influencing without, arms and money, it says. But if you leave the arms out of it, I don't know if money is hard power or soft power, but a resurgent economy, a resurgent people are certainly soft power. The other thing that people don't look at is our Indians who are settled abroad. Many of them come back, many of them expats, as we call them. They're truly a soft power. Some of them have done, as we all know, some very, very many of them have done extraordinarily well. They are our soft power. They don't always agree politically, perhaps, with the present dispensation, which is my party's dispensation, by the way. But it doesn't mean that they are not an advertisement for India. Why was G20 a success, such a success? Basically because it was so inclusive. Prime Minister Modi, one of his geniuses is that he doesn't look merely at the large picture. He looks at all the tiny, tiny things that go into the big picture. The African nations, Latin America, countries who don't speak English as their, national language, but who have in many ways, they almost run the world. For example, the Middle Eastern countries, the OPEC, what used to be called OPEC, right? And this is the worldview of a man who's not somebody who talks English like most of us here do. When he talks English, it's with a distinct accent of his own, but he still has the confidence. He speaks in Hindi when he goes outside India. There are many things that add to it, but I think basically this is that as a resurgent country, whether it's economics, whether it is the fact that it has, people say polarized. I say the opposite. It's brought a lot of us together. Most Indians weren't even interested in politics. Today, politics is, I'm not saying politics is the be-all and end-all or should be the be-all and end-all of life, but undeniably it can make or break a country. And today we see a different view of not just India as a country, as a people, but even other economies, other countries. Few people would ever question the US or with regard to India, the British, and even China. But today, even the most ordinary person in India is happy to, talk about things that they never really thought about, except roti kapda masala.
Fair point, but I'm going to be uncharacteristically provocative here and ask you, are you passing off essentially bashed wife syndrome as soft power? Because like Naipaul said, we're a deeply wounded civilization. Is it resilience or is it kind of forced submission? Because even in bashed wife syndrome, as it's explained in court, the wife can be extremely achieving and productive outside and be completely traumatized in the home environment. Is that really soft power?
I wouldn't call India a bashed wife anymore. Maybe she was at one time, but not anymore.
Okay.
Maybe she was at one time. I'm a woman, so I mean, I can understand. I think a lot of women here will understand what I'm saying. You can get out of the syndrome. Maybe she was a bashed wife for many, many years. But I don't think anymore.
But do you think that, you see an increasing crescendo of Hindu-misia, Hindu-phobia, whatever you want to call it in the Western press, the kind of things which would have never been said at some point of time, which would have been dismissed as outright white racism at some point of time, are today the rigor. It's almost like talking points. You can't get published in a Western journal or whatever unless you've done checklist of, there's fascism, there's Nazism, there's this, there's that, evil Hindus doing this, that, whatever. Which brings me to you, Shopanda. What do you think are the where we've succeeded in soft power, where we've not succeeded, or have something like that?
No, just to reply to that last comment of yours, that if you call what I said, bashed woman syndrome, then that's the husband who suddenly feels that, oh my God, what's happening? I was the boss, now somebody else is trying to be the boss. That's what the West is doing. Okay. If they think we're bash women, they're the husband who was the basher, who now suddenly feels, oh my God, my superiority is being questioned, or my authority is being questioned. And they're trying to bash us the only way they know.
Okay. Swapan?
Yeah, well, I don't know what the official or acceptable definition, sorry, okay. I don't know what the official or acceptable definition of soft power is, but as far as I'm concerned, anything which is non-sarkari is basically what is soft power. And I think that would more or less sum up the entire gamut of civil society and its various activities. Now, look at it one way. This Lit Fest is a perfect example, not only the fact that it's a Lit Fest, but also the fact where it's being held. I mean, there's no hard power in Pondicherry. I'm yet to detect it in any meaningful way. It's all soft power. It's appeal, what people like about it, whether they like the spiritual dimension about it or whether they like the booze about it. Whichever it is. And I think we see, on a weekend, we see both of it in full play. Now that's soft power. Now the point about it is that India has grown more and more confident about projecting its soft power. I think that's where it always existed. But we have become far greater degree of confidence. And more important, and this was your G20 analogy, is that the Sarkar is far more receptive that soft power is a very important facet of India than was hardly the case. Now, if those of you who remember the bad old days, as I call it, of going into an Indian embassy overseas, you'd find the mandatory Nataraj there. You'd also find the Cottage Emporium, brass thing there and some Rajasthani bits of furniture. And that was soft power for them. After that, it was a litany of Sarkari handouts. There was nothing else. I remember many years ago telling one Rashtrapati that why is the food in Rashtrapati Bhavan so uniformly bad and similar? I've had it for the past 20 years, it's exactly the same. You start off with an almond soup, then you put up with a fish fry, and then there's something or the other. It's more or less, it followed a particular pattern. And I was told that it's because it's the Rashtrapati Bhavan canteen or the kitchen, canteen is the wrong word, kitchen is handled by the army. And the army will not let anyone else enter. Now, what happened differently in G20? And this is there. It's not really the millet part. That's political correctness.
You knew I'd taken out the menu just to cross-question you on that.
It's not the millet part I'm talking about. But in various, whether it was the finance minister's meet or something, various celebrity chefs of India were actually deputed, and none of them worked for ITDC. Thank God for that. They were all deputed to conduct, to do the catering for that particular event, dinner. So, in other words, the mere fact that India today has a vibrant culinary industry was showcased. The fact that Indian food is a big selling point. And Indian food, mind you, is very different from Bangladeshi Indian food. Now, I still remember my days as a student in the United Kingdom when you wanted to have bad Indian food. And there's a particular category called bad Indian food, which is had on Friday nights when people have had an overdose of beer. And that you go to the Sylheti restaurants. And as opposed to that, you today have actually quality Indian restaurants. And some of those, incidentally, are far better than anything you get in India. Partly because some of the raw ingredients, the material, the spices are much better, etc. But whatever it is, so you have this entire category of a formal recognition of that. Now take into account, I was in Bangladesh last week, and what I found, what is the greatest appeal? Bangladeshis have this love-hate relationship with India. You know, they always feel that India is overbearing, it's trying to grab Bangladesh, etc. It's quite imaginary, but it doesn't matter, it's real. I mean, it's real in the sense that feeling exists. But on one thing they believe, it's that, healthcare is best in India. Healthcare. All they come to is the Vellore or Chennai. Some of the lesser ones go to Calcutta, but that's really, so you see healthcare. Bollywood is of course there. Whether you love it or fear it, it's there. Cricket is there. So we have defined our own soft power, which is, and thank God, it's got above government. And it's gone above government. And I think that's the important thing. Today we can actually celebrate, we can have, almost every city has a lit fest. Almost. I'm not saying every city, but almost every city has a lit fest. And all of them draw people. You have some really big ones like Jaipur is, Jaipur has become a global brand. Others haven't yet quite made that great, but sooner or later they will. They will all establish a certain niche identity. And the more the niche identity is there, the more the selling point is there. So you have these, whether it's IPL, whether it's T20, whether it's, whatever the film. And there are some things who have not managed to make the soft power great. There are some who have fallen behind. Just like Telugu films have made the soft power.
Yes.
Who would have thought that? You thought that Hindi was going to dominate. It hasn't.
It is
it
not.
didn't.
No.
Not at all. Telugu film. And there are some who have not made it. Bong films are one of those.
Just to put up a little bit of a defense of Bengal, and this keeps coming back.
I mean, look at it. All three of us.
Hello, I'm half Tamil, so I'm.
So it's
Lalitha Kumaramangalam
he's
is
also
half
Tamil.
Tamil. Yeah. But this is, I think, the most truly representative Aurobindo-Auroville panel, because it's a combination of Tamil and Bengalis, half and half, right? But I wanted to pick your brain on two things, because, you were sort of pro-free market and right-wing in this country when those were very dirty words in this country, and you paid a heavy price for it. So, I've always grown up reading you being against government intervention and things like that. But aren't there times when government intervention is a good thing? Let me give you an example, because you brought this up, because you brought up Bangladesh and you brought up the menu at G20. Let me first read out bad government intervention to you. And this is the menu of the G20 that was held, the leaders' dinner. Foxtail millet leaf crisps topped with yogurt, sphere and spiced chutney. Jackfruit galette served with glazed forest mushrooms with a little millet crisp curry leaf tossed Kerala red rice. This is what our government does. On the other hand,
some celebrity chef.
But who chose the celebrity chef?
Okay. It was not by open tender, and it didn't have an L1 in it.
It was some government joint secretary doing it, right?
I can tell you there was some subject.
Yeah. Okay. But on the other hand, let's take a look at Bangladesh, what they've done with, say, ilish and rice. They've created the French terroir or the
They've
Italian...
also created something called ilish biryani.
Yes, which is actually delicious. But
yes, I think so glad the tastes differ.
But They have created a terroir system like the French or a DOCG system like the Italians, where you actually get a labeling which adds value for the farmer or the fisherman in certifying that something is from this particular area. It is certified to a certain standard. It adds value. Whereas in India, even today, with something like, say, Gobindo Bhog rice, which is, I don't know how many of you know about Gobindo Bhog rice, but it's a far superior rice to that crappy basmati
Biryani,
that you
yes.
people love to eat so much. But if you buy it on Amazon, you're more than likely to get cheated. A really great Gobindo Bhog should smell like hot, toasted, buttered popcorn. Okay? You will never get it, good stuff on Amazon. So you tell me, where is the sweet spot where government intervention is required and where government intervention is not required?
It's not necessary that it can have government intervention. Government intervention could do the trick. But I mean, there are chambers of commerce, there are other bodies which can be set up to do this sort of thing.
Slightly higher if you just hold the mic a bit. Yeah.
Which can do this sort of thing. I mean, Govindo Bhog is a very good thing. You know, for instance, for Darjeeling tea, there's been a lot of movement, etc. For certain weaves and silks, textiles, there has been certain movement. So it's all, this consciousness is growing about. As we become more commercial, as we take into account that there is a world market, this consciousness will actually increase more and more. At one time, we were producing for ourselves.
Yes.
And we were a shortage economy. Today, we are not a shortage economy. And I think one of the big reasons why soft power is developing is because we moved from, our aspirations have grown. And this is something which Lalitha ji was talking about. Our aspirations have grown. And therefore, we can actually afford to talk about things rather than believe that the most creative thing Indians had ever done was jugaad.
Right. Yeah.
Which was once the thought of feeling. You know, the fact that, okay, you've got a washing machine. Instead, you made that into a big center for producing lassi.
Lassi. Yeah.
That was creativity.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, just one intervention. Before it becomes a quarrel between one Bengali, one half Bengali about food and stuff, I just want to interject that one of the things that I should have added is our healthcare system. He's right. Half of Chennai is full of Bangladeshis. You go anywhere near any of the Apollo hospitals in Chennai and you will find literally advertising in Bengali script that this is Bengali food available here. And I one day said, okay, let's go try it. And it was horrible. It was not Bengali food. Touche. Maybe Bangladeshi food, but certainly wasn't the food that any of my mother's family ever cooked or would even eat if it was cooked. But the other thing also is that, I think one of the greatest powers we have is our much maligned education system. This whole IB thing that has now been introduced, I see my sister's grandchildren literally grappling, struggling with it. And the habit that, of course, some of the old colonial habits are still there, unfortunately, in India, where we always find fault with anything that's homegrown. But thankfully, that is going. And that is a success of, the fact that what Swapan was saying, that we are finally beginning to acknowledge that homegrown is great. One of our biggest drawbacks, what held us back, was the fact that we always only depended on what some US company or some US agency did some research with some 25 people and then said, this is what is lacking in India. Again, look at what we're talking about, what's happening in my state of Tamil Nadu and Pondicherry. The fight is now between Tamil and Hindi. Thankfully, not English and Hindi and English and Tamil. So we have progressed in many ways. I'm not saying it's ideal to have this fight between Tamil and Hindi, but the fact is that at long last, after 75 years, we're not talking about English and other languages in India. At least it's accepted that maybe there could be an alternative to English. Not perhaps in Tamil Nadu, sorry to say so, I have to admit that. But in the rest of the country, our nurses, apart from cricket and Bollywood, our nurses are healthcare professionals. It's acknowledged that the best, or I think some 20% of 26%, if I'm right, doctors in America are of Indian origin. And there, even though, I mean, the effort may be made to say that they're not as well trained or not as competent, the fact is actually the opposite. That they're extraordinarily well, they're doing extraordinarily well, not just merely as doctors, but also as administrative people, medical administrators. So our diaspora is a huge soft power for this country. And perhaps we don't, again in the G20 that was reflected. I mean, look at it. The whole of Britain is now ruled by what used to be Indians. One Bangladeshi, one Pakistani, one Rishi Sunak. So we have really now made our presence felt in the world as Indians. The fact that these three gentlemen in Ireland, Scotland, and England say that, yes, you know, our origins are from the subcontinent. Okay, they may not say Indian per se, but certainly what many people would like to call Bharat, that is what we were, undivided India. That itself is, according to me, a huge growth in our soft power. Also, again, the fact that I think India has really the capacity and has survived what has been thrown at us for not just 1,000 years, maybe even more than that in many ways, is our resilience. I suppose that's, one would call it cultural resilience. One would call it civilizational resilience. But I would say, and you know, it's very topical now at the moment, this whole Sanatan thing that has come up. It is not just Hinduism. It covers a lot more than merely what we call Hinduism. I'm not an expert on religion, but in fact, I come from a very, very leftist background. So I really learned religion only after my school and college were over. My father was a communist, my aunt was a communist, so was my mother, and so was my brother in an earlier avatar. He was totally Congressy. I'm the only person now, I mean, who has any sort of right-wing leanings. But this is not about my political ideology. This is about the fact that as an Indian today, I feel proud of myself. 40 years ago, I was questioning myself. And there are millions of Indians like me, which today is probably the most emphatic and most dominant soft power that this country has. That we don't sell ourselves short anymore, or a vast majority of us don't. I'm not saying this is blanket across the country, but the fact that we don't sell ourselves short anymore. We're willing to stand up and shout. We're willing to stand up and argue. We're willing to say, no, we are right. Doesn't matter if you are from the USA or wherever it is. We are right, especially when it comes to our own country. Look at our flourishing literature. It's no longer just in English. When I was young, I hardly read Silapathigaram, etc., which is in Tamil. Or even the Panchatantra, when I read it, I loved it, but it was in English. Today, my granddaughter can read it in Tamil. She's also learning Hindi, but she can read it in Tamil. Many of the classic literature that now children have available to them, they're able to read in their, for want of a better word, their native languages. My mother, Bengali literature is amongst the most beautiful in the world.
So
I read it all in English.
Since you brought up literature and education, I just want to juxtapose the two. Because on one hand, you know, at one point of time, I think people don't realize this. Rabindranath Tagore was insanely popular in South America. You know, he got this rock star reception in Buenos Aires and Sao Paulo and places like that.
Yes.
At the same time, today, you don't see that kind of rock star treatment of Indian literature. On the other hand, the penetration of Indian literature has, I feel, at least, correct me if I'm wrong, become pretty much more significant and mainstream. It's not seen as a sort of, you know, a niche kind of vague oriental literature suddenly thrust upon you kind of thing. You also brought up the issue of education, which then from South America, let's go to Africa, where Indian education has a sort of a niche out there. It's not the top end Ivy League education, but it's seen as very good education for training up all the up and coming engineers who are not required to build, you know, space stations or things like that. They're required for localized innovation at a village or district level in Africa. Where do you see that sort of middling, a sort of middle income education niche, or a sort of plebeianized literature, if you want to call it that? I don't know. I mean, you might get offended by that.
Yeah, I am offended by plebeianized.
I always aim to be.
The fact is that, look, one of the things that after the moon landing that was advertised so widely, and I'm glad it was that all the scientists, both the men and the women who were involved in the actual work of that, were not from IITs, IIMs, the fancy English-speaking schools, etc.
They were all from South India.
They were all from South India, but I mean, I studied in Good Shepherd Convent. So till today, I was just telling Abhijit, was it you or somebody else, that I can sing that stupid hymn even today. Whereas I learned, the Hindu, what is my religion, those hymns much later in life. But that aside, they were all from what you call plebeian middle class backgrounds, local schools, local engineering institutes, and come on, they landed something on the wrong side of the moon till today at 1/3 the cost, I think, of any one of Elon Musk's satellites. So you have this trillionaire who himself has admitted that how the hell did they do it so cheaply? But we did, and we did it successfully, which is the point that finally India has come into its own. According to me, all of what we're talking about boils down to this one point. And that today is our greatest soft power, including our Prime Minister, if you see. He's a homegrown middle class man, but look at what he's done, what he's been able to do.
So,
he's got it
Swapan,
all together.
just to bring you in here, because this sort of price point innovation that Lalitha ji is talking about, how is it different from the jugaad you hate so much? Because essentially, a Chandrayaan is a price point innovation. It's not an innovation.
That's all it is.
Isn't it?
Okay.
You tell me.
That's a very accountant's view of the whole thing.
I did my BCom, so yeah.
How much did we save and how much could we have, could we have actually inflated the costs a little bit? Chalo, that could have been a jugaad also. The whole point about the Chandrayaan thing is that it's done a phenomenal amount of good to the reputation of India as an education hub. The mere fact that these were homegrown people, they were homegrown not from exactly the top IITs, but from the second level engineering colleges. The ones who actually produce the engineers in India. The IITs produce the bankers. Most of them. And they produce a good amount of labor or skilled manpower for the global multinationals. That's what the IITs have done so far. But instead, now the point is, when we're talking about soft power, we're not talking about soft power vis-a-vis ourselves. We know what our soft power and our hard power, what our strengths, what our weaknesses are exactly. We are talking about how it affects India insofar as its relationship with the wider neighborhood and the wider world is concerned. Now, one of the things which has been underused in India has been education as a soft power instrument. Now, one of the things which I noticed when I was in Afghanistan, before the Taliban got back in, was that one of the demands which was constantly there was that you people are giving us scholarships to go to colleges, but what we need is scholarships or some sort of assistance to send our best students to schools. And this is something which you find even in Bangladesh and all. Okay, it's the elite which wants it. But that's a very, very important thing. And the elite has a very, very, crucial role. After all, Lalitha ji was being very modest about her communist background, forgetting the communism was from King's College, Cambridge. The uncle was from Eton and Sandhurst. So, she was being a bit selective about her communism. It was a very refined communism, I might say so. The type of communism which unfortunately has not been seen since, but which did a lot of damage to India. Now, to get back to this entire question, Rabindranath Tagore was a great hit in South America, you say. Whether that had to do with Rabindranath Tagore's particular relationship with certain South Americans is another matter altogether. But the point is, he was regarded as an exotic being.
Yes.
There was something very exotic about Rabindranath, right from his dress, etc. He was the wise man from the East who came in with the stars. And that feeling that he predated Maharishi Mahesh Yogi in terms of being spiritualism as an Indian export. He anticipated that in his own way. He didn't quite take it up. That was it, but it was the basis on which his appeal was based. Certainly. Now today, we've moved very much more than what we can call Rabindranath Tagore's or spiritualism as an export.
Right.
That sort of India, the India which was otherworldly, was also the basis for this. Now, if you look at Aurobindo purely as a spiritualist and not as a nationalist, you'll come to that same conclusion. See, Aurobindo had two dimensions.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because his appeal as a nationalist is something which is very, very profound.
Right.
And the fact is that's sometimes forgotten. And like, for instance, Vivekananda, and I don't want to be sectarian, but say, for instance, the Ramakrishna Mission would rather project him as a newfound guru in California, which he is not. He was a Hindu nationalist. And that's sometimes forgotten. So again, it depends. In terms of projecting in terms of trying to get your soft part right, you end up sometimes distorting what is there in India.
So true. You make this very important point about calibration. Now, let's apply it to the two things that you raised. The first was Telugu movies. And this sort of view of Rabindranath Tagore as exoticism. How is an Indian movie, it's still seen as a sort of niche, exotic movie, as opposed to, say, an Iranian movie, which is seen as a mainstream movie, number one. So how do you calibrate that? And the second thing to calibrate is something you raised just now, which was nationalism. Now, in India, a resurgent society, nationalism is a good thing. But for a Europe that's moving more social democrat left, and America also that's moving quite far loony left, in fact, nationalism is a very dirty word. Europeans and increasingly Americans, for them, nationalism is only National Socialism, which is Nazism.
Except in Hungary or Poland.
Except in Hungary and Poland, which Donald Rumsfeld called the New Europe, as opposed to the old normative, the Empire of Norms, Western Europe. How do we calibrate this? Because both the things you've raised then become, nationalism in India is great. Nationalism everywhere is not German nationalism or Italian nationalism of the mid-20th century. But how do you calibrate that message out? Because that's where soft power can turn into undesirable outcomes, I guess.
Do you want to?
I don't know. You tell me.
Do you feel that it's your national responsibility to be able to influence global thinking in that way? Except insofar as it affects you.
So this is a very philosophical question you ask, because you look at the difference between India and Rome. Rome wanted to influence people historically. India is like, we don't try to influence other people. It happens or it doesn't happen. So where is the philosophical mean out here? Should we be learning to influence other people? A Pax Romana kind of Pax Indica, or at least a mental Pax Indica? Or do we just sit by and, allow people to see the greatness of India or not see it, as the case may be.
Abhijit, you've forgotten our history. You're talking about just the last 1,000 years. Look at the empires of the Cholas, or the Cheras, or the Pandyas. They went well somewhere into what we call Southeast Asia today.
Yes.
You go to Angkor Wat, you see more Pulayar, that is Ganesh, than you see, I don't even know, quite frankly, what the names of their gods are. But you see far more of Ganesh. When I went there, I asked this question, where are we? I mean, it was a rhetorical question, but all the 4 days that it took me to walk through that whole thing, I saw Ganesh everywhere. Yeah. You go to Thailand, you have that wonderful, the green Ganesh, what's that stone called?
Jade.
Jade, right? It's exquisite, but it's again Ganesh. No, it's a Buddha, sorry, not Ganesh, Buddha. So why do we forget that even our religion has been our soft power? Today, within India, the clash between, that's a different issue. But historically, India had a lot of soft power that was used along with its trade power. The Sera Chola Pandyas were trading kings.
But the Cholas, just to add, also invaded and destroyed the entire Srivijaya kingdom. So there was an element of hard power there.
There
as
was.
well.
So I'm saying it's
combined. So the
combined.
point is, how do you calibrate it? Where do we start? How do you tailor the message to different audiences? Because from what I get from Shopanda, correct me if I'm wrong, Shopanda, is that you're saying that we should just put the message out there and it doesn't need calibration. It'll look after itself. But in my experience, soft power requires a great deal of shepherding and calibration in order to not end up hurting you.
Look, let's be blunt. Merely soft power is not enough. Soft power combined with hard power is what really makes a country powerful. Let's not sit here and kid ourselves saying that merely soft power can get you everywhere. It's soft power combined with hard power. Today's India is not just about soft power. This session is. But India is today not just about soft power. G20 was not just soft power. Let's not make that mistake. There was a lot of hard power involved there. But a hard power, I mean, an iron fist in a beautiful velvet glove. Let me put it that way. And that is what today's India is. That we recognize that our soft power can help us to reach the top, or whatever you want to call it, to make India once again an influential, because that's what soft power is supposed to be about, influence. So it's the combination of soft and what's called soft and what's hard power. That is what India is emerging today. I'm not saying we're already there. We're nowhere near it. But that is also a huge shift in the thinking. Most Indians still about, not 10, I would say even about 5 years ago, didn't think we could get there. But we have. And again, I say this and again, this is what our soft power today is. That we think that yes, we can and we will.
Fair point.
May I just say something? You know, it's only very, very recently, all of you who witnessed the debate on the media, there was one significant point which was made, that okay, there have been a lot of excesses in the media, etc. But the fact is, this medium is about not more than 15 to 20 years old. It's comparatively a recent.
Hold the mic up.
Now, the mere fact that India today, we can talk about going to the moon, we can talk about the Chandrayaan mission, we can talk about hosting important functions such as the G20, etc. The fact that we count somewhere in the world is very, very recent phenomena. Yes. How old is that? It's not even 20 years old. Before that, we were sometimes despairing. You know, around 2012, we were talking about India as one of the failing states of BRICS. Yes. If you recall that.
Absolutely. I remember this.
So you see how recent all this is. So in terms of everything, we still carry an enormous baggage of crass mediocrity.
Yes.
And that striving for excellence is something which is an ongoing project in India.
Right.
And that has a lot of problems in it. There are political issues which are involved in it. There are other social attitudes which are involved in it.
Yes.
But in other words, we are still taking a lot of time. So I think what we have achieved is considerable, but what we need to achieve in terms of our potential, I don't think we've come anywhere near the top.
Fair point.
So I think that is something we should keep in perspective when we are talking about soft power. When we heard about, before that there was a session on archaeology.
Yes.
I mean, history.
Yeah.
You know, and one of the things that you recall is that there used to be vibrant departments of Indology, which included archaeology at one time in all the universities, or at least the major universities. Those are wrecks now.
Yes.
You have manuscripts in the National Archives. I remember a very, very lovely Dogri manuscript which the archivist showed to me. And then I said, when was it last consulted? He said, well, you see, there was only one person who knows this script. He was in America. Now, this is what is the state of some of our classical learning which has happened.
Yeah.
So we've got a long way to catch up. We've
Absolutely.
got to recover.
Absolutely. So we have to go for the Q&A. But just before the Q&A, just one last very, very short intervention from each of you. What is one soft power, emerging soft power trend, a cultural trend which can become soft power that you personally detest and never want to see turn into soft power?
Okay, I mean, this was a point I made myself. Sometimes I think Indians are too tolerant. I was very happy to see at G20 that despite Xi and Putin not being there, we went ahead with it, made a darned good success of it, and claimed it. So India 5 years ago or 10 years ago wouldn't have done it. We would have waited for the approval from others. We should stop being so tolerant, and we should stop touting our Sanatana Dharma or Hinduism, the words differ from people to people, as being merely the fount of tolerance. It's more the fount of inclusion. That perspective, I think,
fair point,
should be understood
Shabanda?
And changed.
Well, I think, we have got a vast reservoir of self-loathing.
Fair point.
And I think if somehow we can overcome that and not allow it to turn into absolute arrogance and smugness, which can happen so easily.
It can.
I think it's between those two, we've got to somehow find the right balance.
All right. So we have 10 minutes left. So I would request half the smug, arrogant ones to put up their hands, and some of the other half of the self-loathing ones to also put up their hands.
Can I ask a question all the way there?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. Lalitha
But just please direct your question to one of the panelists, and please make it a question, not to me, and please make it a question, not a comment. Thank you.
Lalitha ji, I'm sorry, I'm going to turn my back to you. It's natural for us to feel proud of our Indians abroad, but is it important for a part of the creme of the diaspora? Will they serve the country better by being here? And if yes, how do we attract them?
I think it's a bit late for most of what you call the creme of our diaspora to return to India to serve us, unless, they bring back their billions or whatever it is and then put them all into institutions that would actually try to empower the less empowered sections of India. But they serve as a darn good advertisement, especially because today they are appreciative of, and also they know that today's India is somewhere where, it will do them good also to claim that we are from India. 15 years ago, they would never have bothered to say that, we are from here. But this change has, whoever it's been brought in by, etc., that's a different question. But the fact is that today, I'm talking about today, not what may have happened. My father's generation, as Dada very aptly put it, there was Cambridge, there was Oxford, there was another Oxford, and there was another Sandhurst, right in my own father's family. They may have been very effective, very efficient, brilliant, and all of that, but their worldview was very different from what it is today. I'm constantly asked, how can you be in the BJP coming from this background? Now, sometimes I've gotten fed up of answering that question, but the fact is that mentalities have changed. The same diaspora 10 years back, I would not have claimed as any sort of credit to India. But today, because they claim it as part of their credit, it is a soft power.
Right. There's a gentleman there, and then there were two hands that went up there. I'm just going to start bunching questions because we're running out of time. Sir,
So,
if you could hold the mic up, please.
am I audible? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, my question is on the soft power that we are talking about. Ma'am said, and Swapanda also mentioned that nurses and the doctors and the scientists and the players, they are some of the soft powers that we have. But please, in my understanding, you don't become a doctor or a scientist in the highest of the universities. It starts from the schools. Yeah, that's what I'm asking. I'm coming to that. So, but the schooling is so costly in India today. And how do people, population of this country, which is far below the where they are financially, can afford this, this kind of schooling?
Okay.
So if we do not work on that,
Yeah.
how do we continue to produce these kind of scientists and doctors and athletes? And thank you.
Dean's question. Two people hand up here. Wait, 1 second. Here. The gentleman, the bald gentleman here. And then the gentleman in the black shirt. Mike.
Okay. My name is Lakshay. I would like to hear from Swapanda, why do we even need soft power? If it is for influence, like you said, then does the so-called Dowal doctrine, which we use for hard power, which is defensive offense, can also be used for a soft power, wherein we influence the outsiders using our philosophical might. And I am quick addendum. I am from Oroville, and we have about 60 nationals from around the world. So is it a kind of a form of soft power too? In a way, how can we use it, and what is the role of government in kind of taking the idea of Oroville forward? Thank you.
Of course, it's soft power.
Namaste. My question is to my question is to Madam. The soft power. Now, I agree with you that it's nothing if the hard power doesn't exist. But what do you think are some of the strategic objectives that a soft power must achieve for us? Because we discussed a lot of stuff, but a centered focus on that is required.
So, there were three questions. The last one was tangibles. Then there was the question of the ways and means. If things are getting more expensive, how do we afford to do certain things? And sorry, you started to answer the second question. Go ahead.
Yeah, of course. I mean, when you're talking about whether Oroville is the ashram is a soft power center or not, of course it is. It is in every sense. It is. They don't have to necessarily proclaim it. But when we're talking about soft power, we basically mean it as a complement to hard power, which is exactly what Lalitha ji was trying to say. That unless you have a degree of hard power, your soft power is of no consequence, and you'll end up like Britain, which has a considerable amount of soft power,
Yes.
but lacks any standing in the world because of its absence of hard power now.
Yes. Yes.
But its soft power is formidable. It's formidable. It's far beyond that of its other standing. Now, we are, in the sense, our hard power is probably greater than our soft power. But the point is how to make sure that there is a parity, that one complements the other, and that in some senses, not necessarily a government vision, but a certain societal vision, we can actually know what is the strategic purpose behind it.
Right.
And that inculcates within society. And these are not something which can be done with a lesson, but it's something which happens. How did Bollywood become a soft power? It's not that someone thought about it.
Yeah.
How did cricket become something? It didn't, not that someone thought about it. It just happened. And then you pushed it in a particular direction.
Yeah. Lalitha ka, if you
Yeah,
want to answer
with
the-
regard to education, I agree with the gentleman, but let me remind you again of a little history from Tamil Nadu. We had a fantastic politician called Kamaraj, who was sidelined when Indira Gandhi they didn't get along with each other politically. He was the man who came up with the noon meal scheme, that scheme. Now, that scheme transformed Tamil Nadu over the last 40 years, which is basic education at the primary and middle level of schooling. I'm not really a great fan of freebies, but that particular scheme is one of the best schemes, I would say, amongst the top 2 or 3 schemes any politician post-independence has ever had or introduced in this country. Noon meal scheme is for the really poor in government schools. Children were sent to school so that they could. Kamaraj was an illiterate man. He said that, it's like giving a bribe, telling the parents that you're not able to feed your children, send them to school, they will also get fed. And that's exactly what happened. It doesn't happen overnight. This was in the 60s, so we are well almost 50, 60 years of it. Today, Stalin has had the sense to say, I won't give just a meal in the afternoon, I'll give breakfast also. I have maids in Chennai who say that we go to drop our children at school. We also do some of the cooking. We also get,
So basically,
a breakfast.
iteration over time where the quality slowly starts improving
Yes.
with every
And
repeat iteration.
we need to look more, the government, I mean the governments across the states, need to look more at government schooling improving. We are all from the elite. So we talk about schools where fees are too high. Remember that the vast majority of India, especially in what unfortunately are called the Bimaru states, children don't go to school at all. Many of them. And if they do go, the schools are so bad that the education they get can't really be called education at all. So the real investment now should be into seeing that more and more children from the poorest communities go to school. I agree that the cost of schooling should come down in the upper and the elite schools that our children go to. But then we send our children to those schools, no? We should get together. I don't know if you call it unionization or what, but we need to also, the latest school in Chennai, for example, is Shiv Nadar School. I'm told it costs something like 5 lakhs a year just for a primary schooler. And that's obnoxious, according to me. I wouldn't have sent anybody from my family. I'd have said, sorry, she can go as well to my old school of Good Shepherd, which is just about 50,000 a year, probably, or 60,000. But the fact is that it's also us. We want to go into the elitist schools, the biggest schools, the one with the swimming pool, the one with the this and the one with the that.
Fair point.
So it's not just the fault. The people will bring down their prices if they think they're not getting admissions.
So it's a function of the market. I'll have to end the session here. So thank you so much. If you like the moderation, please come and congratulate me later on. If you didn't like the panel, please feel free to throw some books from there at the panel later on. I thank you very much. You've been a fantastic audience. Thank you.